The first sound that morning wasn't my alarm. It was a high-pitched, metallic scream that cut right through my bedroom window. A commercial-grade angle grinder. It was 7:04 a.m. I'm a man who appreciates precision. I've lived in this house, 14 Oakshade Lane, for 45 years. I designed it. I designed most of this neighborhood, back when it was just apricot orchards in a dream. I know the acoustics of this valley. That sound was coming from the community workshop. I pulled on my robe, my knuckles already white. The workshop wasn't just a building. It was a promise I'd made to my wife, Eleanor, before she passed. A place where people could fix things. A place where kids could learn to build something real, instead of just staring at screens. A place that smelled of sawdust and potential. I walked out my front door, across the dew-wet grass, and there it was.
A 6-foot-tall chain-link fence, the kind they use for construction sites, had been erected overnight. It surrounded the workshop completely, and stapled to the solid oak door I'd hung myself in 1978 was a laminated sign, the all-too-familiar beige and teal logo of the Oakshade Beautification Committee. Property of the HOA, it read, in an aggressive sans-serif font. This structure is scheduled for demolition. Unauthorized access is prohibited. Aesthetic compliance in progress. Aesthetic compliance. That was her phrase. Cynthia Kline. She'd moved into the Miller house 6 months ago, fresh from some coastal metropolis, with a trust fund and an online blog about curated living. She saw our neighborhood not as a community, but as a brand that needed managing. She'd formed the committee in her first 30 days. Her first act was to try and force us to paint our mailboxes a specific, joyless shade of taupe she called harmonious greige. I, of course, had my original architectural plans, which specified forest green. My mailbox remained forest green. This, I learned, was what Cynthia called legacy non-compliance. She hated me. Not in an aggressive, loud way, but in a cold, smiling, passive-aggressive way that was far worse. She saw me as a relic. I saw her as a parasite, sucking the soul out of the place Eleanor and I had built. I stood there, staring at the sign. The grinder screamed again, this time from behind the workshop. They weren't just fencing it off, they were inside. I grabbed the fence and shook it. It was solid. A man in a hard hat, someone I'd never seen before, walked around the corner. He glanced at me, then at his clipboard. "Morning. You'll have to step back, sir. HOA property." "This is not HOA property," I said. My voice was low, but it didn't shake. That's one thing you learn as a city planner. Never let them hear you shake. "Says so on my work order," he grunted, uninterested. "They're remediating this shed. Liability issues, you know." He turned his back. Remediation, demolition, liability. These were the words of bullies. They were the corporate speak used to justify tearing down something good to build something pointless. I knew exactly what she wanted.
She'd announced it at the last meeting, the one I'd been foolish enough to miss. She wanted to replace the workshop with a members-only wellness spa and yoga retreat. She'd even had a glossy rendering. It looked like a glass box, sterile, cold, soulless. I walked back to my house, the grinder's shriek following me. My hands were shaking now. This wasn't about a mailbox. This wasn't about the fine she'd sent Mrs. Petrovac for planting unapproved sunflowers. This was a declaration of war. This was an attack on memory. And Cynthia Kline had just made the terrible mistake of picking a fight with the man who had personally drawn the blueprints for the entire battlefield. She thought this was her neighborhood. It was time to remind her who actually built it. I went into my study. Not the living room with its comfortable chairs, but the room where I still kept my drafting table. I pulled out the original 1978 plat map for the Oakshade development. I unrolled the crisp, heavy paper. The smell of old ink and graphite filled the air. I ran my finger down the legend, past the residential lots, past the drainage easements, until I found it. Lot 7B, the community workshop. And next to it, the two words Cynthia Kline had never, in all her curated research, bothered to look for. Public trust. I'd have to go to the courthouse to get the full charter, but I already knew what it would say, because I'm the one who wrote it.
I deeded that half-acre plot not to the future residents, not to an HOA that didn't even exist yet, but to the township itself, in perpetuity, for the express purpose of community education and recreation. Cynthia wasn't just breaking an HOA bylaw, she was breaking the law. I picked up the phone. "Good morning," I said to the town clerk. "This is Arthur Vance. I need to pull the original 1978 Oakshade Charter. Yes, the full file. And I need to schedule a 5-minute slot at the next township council meeting." The town clerk, Marge, had been there since I was submitting blueprints with T-squares and drafting pencils. "Arthur," she said, her voice crackling over the phone, "I haven't seen these files in 20 years. You stirring up trouble?" "Just verifying some history, Marge. I'll be down in 20 minutes. The drive to the township hall was a blur of harmonious grage. Cynthia's influence was spreading. 3 mailboxes had already been repainted.
She was winning the war of attrition. At the hall, Marge handed me the file. It was thick, bound in old red cardstock. The pages were yellowed, smelling of archives and history. I sat at a heavy oak table under a flickering fluorescent light and read the words I had written 4 decades ago. The language was iron-clad. Lot 7B, it read, is hereby granted to the Township of Oakshade as a public trust to be maintained in perpetuity for the express purpose of providing non-commercial, recreational, and educational facilities for all residents. It got better. No association, committee, or private entity may alter, impede access to, or redesignate the primary use of said lot without a binding public referendum and a unanimous vote of the Township Council. A unanimous vote. She hadn't just overstepped, she had leapt into a legal canyon. I made copies of everything, the charter, the plat map, the specific covenants. I felt the old fire returning, the precision, the satisfaction of a well-designed plan. When I returned home, an email was waiting. It was from the OBC desk, Cynthia's official HOA channel. The subject, an exciting future for Oakshade Commons. It was a masterpiece of corporate propaganda.
It spoke of re-envisioning our shared spaces and right-sizing our amenities to reflect modern values. It called the workshop an underutilized and potentially hazardous structure that was a drain on our collective resources. Then came the payload. To fund this exciting revitalization, the committee has approved a one-time special assessment of $1,200 per household. This will cover the safe remediation of the old structure and the groundbreaking for our new community wellness center. My phone rang. It was Betty Petrov. She was crying. "Mr. Vance, Arthur, $1,200? They can't do this. My pension. I spent my garden money on that taupe paint she demanded. I can't." "Don't pay it, Betty," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "Don't you dare pay it. It's not legal." "But the email says it's mandatory. It says they can put a lien on my house." "It's a lie, Betty. Go to the township meeting on Wednesday. Can you do that?" She sniffled. Yes, I can." The next call was from Frank Gable, the retired shop teacher who ran the youth program at the workshop. His voice was hollow. "Art, they threw my lathes out, just on the curb. Said it was trash. 30 years of tools, my father's tools." My blood ran cold.
This wasn't just demolition, it was desecration. "Frank," I said, "meet me at my house. Bring your class rosters, bring your photos, bring everything." Just as Frank was pulling up, a sleek white electric SUV glided into my driveway. Cynthia Kline. She emerged wearing a crisp linen blazer, her sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara. She didn't knock, just walked up to my porch as if she owned it. "Arthur, we need to talk." "We do," I said, not moving from my doorway. "I'm glad you stopped by." She gave a tight, practiced smile. "I heard you were at the township hall, digging up old papers. Arthur, I know this is hard. Change is hard, especially when you're so attached to the past." She gestured at my forest green mailbox. "But this is what the community wants. We're moving forward. The spa's going to add incredible value to all our homes." "My home has all the value it needs," I said. "What you're doing is illegal." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes went cold. "I was hoping you'd be reasonable. I was even going to offer you a complimentary charter membership to the spa in honor of your legacy. But if you're going to be obstructive, you need to understand something. Our legal team has reviewed the bylaws. The HOA has full authority over all common areas. That workshop is a common area. It's that simple."
"Your old papers don't mean anything." "You're wrong," I said. "It's not a common area. It's a public trust." She actually laughed, a short, sharp barking sound. "Oh, Arthur, that's just sentimental language. It's meaningless. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have contractors to manage. I expect your compliance. And please, tell your friends to pay the assessment. We wouldn't want to start foreclosure proceedings against poor Mrs. Petrov." She turned and glided back to her silent car, the picture of unearned confidence. She didn't know it, but she had just handed me the final piece of my presentation. It wasn't just about the law anymore. It was about the threats. Frank stood in my doorway, holding a box. "What was that all about?" "That," I said, opening the door for him, "was the sound of arrogance. And arrogance always miscalculates." We spent the next 2 days preparing for war. Frank's box was a goldmine. Photos of children holding up birdhouses they'd built. A letter from a single mother thanking him for teaching her son to fix their broken chairs. A wait list for his adult woodworking class that was 30 names long. Underutilized, Cynthia had called it. I prepared a simple, devastatingly clear presentation. No harmonious grade fonts, just black and white. Slide 1, the 1978 plat map, Lot 7B, circled in red. Slide 2, the 1978 charter, the public trust clause, highlighted in yellow. Slide 3, the unanimous vote clause. Slide 4, a photo of Frank's lathes on the curb next to a photo of Cynthia's glossy spa rendering. Slide 5, a copy of the $1,200 special assessment email, and next to it, the legal definition of wire fraud. Wednesday evening. The township council chamber was small, paneled in dark wood, and smelled of old coffee and floor wax. It was packed. I'd never seen it so full. Betty Petrov was in the front row, clutching her purse. Frank Gable was beside her, his jaw set. In the back, I saw at least a dozen people I recognized from the workshop, faces I hadn't seen in years, all drawn by the news. And in the center, like a queen holding court, sat Cynthia Kline, flanked by 2 men in suits I didn't recognize, her legal team. She was smiling, handing out glossy brochures for the Wellness Center. She saw me walk in with my single manila folder and gave me a nod of pure pity, as if I were a lost child.
I just nodded back and took my seat. The meeting began. Routine business. Road paving, a variance for a new deck. Then Council President Miller, a man I'd known since he was a rookie cop, cleared his throat. Next item, a proposal from the Oakshade Beautification Committee regarding Lot 7B, the community workshop. Cynthia glided to the podium. She was a performer. Her voice was smooth, empathetic. She spoke of progress and safety. She painted a picture of the workshop as a dilapidated, rat-infested fire trap, a magnet for loitering. She held up a blurry photo of some graffiti that had been painted after her fence went up. "This," she said, her voice dripping with sorrow, "is what happens when we let our shared assets decay. It's a liability. It's an eyesore, and frankly, it's depressing." She then clicked to her renderings, the glass box. "But we have an opportunity to create something truly special, a place for wellness, for peace, for curation. A place that will dramatically increase our property values and make Oakshade the envy of the county." She smiled at the council. "The committee, using the authority granted in our bylaws, has already begun remediation. We are here tonight simply to ask for the council's blessing as we move forward with this exciting new vision." One of her lawyers stepped up. "Council, we have reviewed the HOA covenants. The committee is fully within its rights to manage and improve all common areas. Lot 7B, as a non-residential parcel, clearly falls under this purview. Any older, vague language about trusts is clearly sentimental, not legal, and is superseded by the established HOA authority." The council members looked impressed. They were nodding. Cynthia's case was slick. It was all about money, safety, and progress. Hard to argue with. Miller looked around. "Thank you, Miss Kline. A very thorough presentation. Is there any public comment on this matter?" I stood up. "I have a comment." I walked to the podium. I didn't look at Cynthia. I looked at the council. "My name is Arthur Vance. I live at 14 Oakshade Lane. I was the lead architect and city planner for the Oakshade development from 1976 to 1980. The mood shifted. A few people sat up straighter. "I want to thank Miss Kline for her creative presentation, but I'm afraid she's operating under a complete and total misapprehension of the facts. She has made 3 catastrophic errors." Cynthia's smile tightened. "Error number 1, I said, placing the 1978 plat map on the overhead projector. The old, clear lines filled the screen. "She called Lot 7B a common area. It is not.
It is a dedicated township lot, just like this building we're in tonight. It does not belong to the HOA. It never has." I clicked to the next slide. The charter. I read the public trust clause aloud. "This lot belongs to the township. It is held in trust for all residents, not just the members of Miss Kline's committee." One of the lawyers whispered furiously to Cynthia. "Error number 2. Miss Kline claims her bylaws supersede this charter. That is legally impossible. This charter is the founding document of the entire development. It is the very document that allows for the existence of an HOA at all. The HOA is subordinate to this charter, not the other way around. And this charter, which I wrote, is very specific." I clicked to the next slide. The unanimous vote clause. This building cannot be altered, and its use cannot be changed without a public referendum and a unanimous vote from this council. So, unless you all plan on voting tonight to seize public land and hand it to a private committee, what Miss Kline is doing is not remediation. It's trespassing and the destruction of public property." The chamber was dead silent. I could hear Cynthia's breathing. "And error number 3. I clicked to the picture of Frank's lathes on the curb. "Miss Kline calls the workshop underutilized. This is a waiting list from Mr. Frank Gable, the volunteer who runs it. There are 30 names on it."
This is a letter from a single mother whose son, thanks to this fire trap, is now the first in his family to be applying for an engineering scholarship. I looked at Frank. He nodded. his eyes shining. Ms. Kline is not improving a community asset. She is destroying it without legal authority, against the wishes of the community, to build a private spa she can charge members for. Which brings me to my final point. I put the $1,200 special assessment email on the screen. This afternoon, Ms. Kline's committee, which has no legal ownership of Lot 7B, sent this email to residents demanding $1,200 to pay for their illegal demolition. They threatened to place liens on the homes of residents like Mrs. Petrov, who was on a fixed income. I looked at the council. This isn't just an HOA dispute. This is an attempt to illegally appropriate public land and to fund that appropriation by threatening and defrauding the residents of this township.
Cynthia's face was the color of her harmonious grayish. Her lawyer was shuffling papers, not looking at anyone. Council President Miller looked at me, then at Cynthia. His face was granite. "Ms. Kline," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Is this true? Did you send this email demanding money for work on township property?" Cynthia stood, but the performance was over. This is a misunderstanding. The bylaws, the legal opinion." Miller struck his gavel. "This council does not recognize your legal opinion. It recognizes the township charter. You have illegally entered and damaged public property. You have attempted to defraud the residents of this community." He pointed to a police officer by the door. "Officer, please take Miss Kline's information. We will be pursuing charges for destruction of property."
He then looked at her lawyer. "And I advise your clients to have a fund ready to pay for the complete restoration of that workshop, or the civil suit will be immediate." Betty was openly weeping with relief. Frank was shaking my hand. I'd just packed my folder. I'd said what I needed to say. The plan was sound, the execution was precise. As I walked out, Cynthia was sputtering at the officer. I just walked past. I went home, and for the first time in 6 months, I slept soundly.